That was pretty.
Oh, hi. How are you? So Sandy and I are going to have a little bit of girl talk.
Yeah,
We're going to talk about some things that...
I've got a bunch of questions for you.
some things that you might be afraid to talk to even your doctor about. I don't know. I'm going to give it a shot here. So what you got for me?
Okay, so, well, I guess I'll start with the ones that aren't so embarrassing.
Okay, that's good.
So, I know, like, you know, back in the day when I used to go to the gym a lot, or I used to go to classes, and, you know, stretching. Does stretching matter? Is it important to stretch first or after, or where does stretching come into all this?
That's a really good question, Sandy. I'm glad you brought it up. Well, stretching, here's the bottom line for stretching. It's very important to understand that muscles don't stretch. As much as we'd like to believe that it's like a rubber band, they don't stretch. They contract and release at the joint. So it's better to be mobile at the joint, to have a joint that moves free, than to stretch. Because if you try to stretch something that doesn't stretch, guess what? It just kind of goes a little bit and it doesn't stretch back. Ligaments and tendons in between the joints have very little stretch at all. You can pull on them a little bit, they won't come back. So understanding to be a little bit more mobile in the joints, do joint mobility drills that we do, and not stretching and holding and reaching, because there's really no point in that. But to allow the muscle to contract and relax as you move that bone is what that muscle is supposed to do.
So I don't want to like you know what everybody else is taught, that you're like pulling until you feel that pain and
right. It's pointless, because muscles don't stretch. It's better to move a bone at the correct joint. Okay, my leg joint is right there at my underwear line. I move my thigh from the correct place. The front part of my thigh contracts or releases depending on how I move my leg. The other part of it relaxes. So it's not about pulling and pulling and pulling and holding. It's not about that, okay? So remember, we're only as flexible as our brain allows us, because it's the brain that controls your muscles, whether they're short, long. The ligaments and tendons in the joints actually gives the feedback to the brain. So if you're not moving from the joint, the brain is not going to get the information it's required to help you move more efficiently. You need to move from the actual joint so that ligaments and all of this gets the right information to the brain, so the brain knows where you are and how far you're going, because the brain's not going to let you injure yourself. It's going to try to hold you back. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's you know, it's a little bit confusing, because it's kind of the opposite of what
everybody's
saying since you were a kid, you know.
Right.
So it's hard to let go.
Well, you look at it this way. When we were kids, I never stretched. Where did this stretching come in? Did we get injured and think, oh, we need to warm that muscle up? You know, your muscle is the same temperature as your blood. I mean, you're 98 point, whatever your body is, 90 point, all the time. It's not like you don't have that warmth in your muscles. So it is confusing, but when you look and you focus on how the brain controls the body, it's so much more efficient and permanent than trying to work from the outside in. Make sense? So we learn to stretch somehow, somewhere in our lives we learn to stretch. Kids don't stretch before they run and play. Again, so it's a different way to look at things, and once you study how the muscles and the bones and the tendons and ligaments and everything and works with the brain, then it makes a little bit more sense. Okay?
Thanks.
That help? Okay, good.
Okay, so give it